In a world drowning in noise, deception, and distraction, most people are quietly falling behind. Not because they're weak, not because they lack faith, but because they've never learned to see the battlefield clearly. You and I are not called to drift through life blind and confused. We are called to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves, not timid, not naive, not gullible, wise. I'm not here to talk to you about greed, tyranny, or crushing everyone around you. I want to talk to you about something far more dangerous and far more powerful. Dominion through wisdom, influence through character, and power through righteous clarity. Because I'm going to walk you through 5 ancient principles, yes. The world would label them Machiavellian, but beneath that label they're rooted in something much deeper. Timeless truth. If you apply them with integrity, they will help you outsmart anyone who tries to manipulate you, rise above the chaos of lies, and move through life with a calm, unshakable dominance. Let's start with rule number 1. Rule number 1. Master the power of silence. Silence is not the absence of power. Silence is power under control. It's the self-mastery you show under pressure. It's the discipline you carry in a world addicted to constant noise and endless talking. The moment you open your eyes, the world starts shouting. Notifications light up your phone. Opinions flood your feed. News anchors argue over each other. At work, at school, at family gatherings, everyone has something to say. In a world where everyone is talking, the one who knows how to be silent becomes rare and powerful. The person who knows when to speak and when to stay quiet becomes the person everyone eventually has to pay attention to. There is deep wisdom in holding your tongue. There is strength in knowing you don't have to say everything you know. You don't have to fight every accusation. And you don't have to jump in and correct every misunderstanding. Because here's the truth. Real power doesn't need a loud introduction. It doesn't need to shout to prove it exists. It simply is. And when you walk into a room with that kind of rooted, steady, secure presence, you start to realize something most people never understand. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. There's an ancient line of wisdom that tells us to be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Why? Because the moment you slow down your words, you speed up your awareness. When you hold your tongue, you give yourself time to see clearly. You stop listening just to respond, and you start listening to truly understand. And when you understand people, what they want, what they fear, what they're hiding, you gain the advantage. Most people talk because they want to be seen. The wise stay quiet so they can see more. When you speak too quickly, you reveal too much. You show your hand before the game has even started. You give your emotions a microphone, and you hand your enemies a map to your mind. But when you remain silent, you become unreadable, unpredictable, in many ways, untouchable. The people who rush to speak almost always give away their power. The ones who wait, who watch, who choose their words carefully, those are the ones power gravitates toward. Think of a lion. A lion doesn't roar before the hunt. It moves slowly, silently, fully aware of everything around it. The roar comes after the kill, not before. Yet most people today are roaring all the time and catching nothing. They argue with everyone. They react to everything. They respond to every insult and every rumor. They are loud, but they are not effective. The ones who keep their mouth closed, who observe, who wait for the right moment, those are the ones who strike with precision. Maybe you're in a situation like that right now. People are provoking you. Someone keeps trying to get a reaction out of you. They want to see you snap so they can use it against you later. But hear me clearly. You do not have to take the bait. You are not required to respond to every accusation. You are not obligated to defend yourself in every conversation. You are not called to join every argument you're invited into. Sometimes the most powerful answer is no answer at all. Truth has a way of standing on its own, but only the wise have the patience to let it. And there's another side to silence most people ignore. There is a spiritual dimension to silence. When you choose to be silent, you're not just stepping away from noise, you're creating space to hear a higher voice. Some of the most powerful breakthroughs in your life will not happen while you're talking, defending, or explaining. They will happen in the quiet, in the stillness, in the moments when you intentionally turn down the volume of the world and lean in to listen to something above it. When you cultivate silence, your perception sharpens. You start noticing the motives behind people's words, the tension behind their laughter, the truth behind their masks. You stop seeing life as it appears and begin to see it as it actually is. Because silence is not emptiness. Silence is awareness. That is the kind of presence you begin to build when you master silence. Not a fake, forced cold front, but an authentic steadiness. You become anchored. A person who doesn't need to speak to prove their worth has already proven it by not needing to. You become the kind of person who can walk through fire, endure criticism, overhear gossip, listen to lies told about you and still hold your peace. Not because you're numb, but because you know who really holds the power. Rule number 2, control perception, control power. People are not led by truth, they are led by what they believe is true. And what they believe is rarely shaped by facts. It's shaped by perception. That right there is the true battlefield. In every room, every relationship, every opportunity, perception quietly dictates who rises and who fades. If you can control how people see you, you don't need to control much else. Because the one who shapes perception shapes reality. Now, here's the uncomfortable truth. The world does not reward what is hidden in the heart. It responds to what it can see. You can have courage, conviction, brilliance. But if others don't perceive it, they'll treat you as if it doesn't exist. And someone else, with half your talent but twice your confidence, will lead the room. That's how power works in the real world. It's not about deception. It's about discernment. You're not called to fake who you are. You're called to frame who you are with intention. Think about this. Perception is the doorway through which power walks. You can have all the truth in the world, but if the door is locked by poor perception, no one will listen. The wise understand this balance. They know when to speak, when to remain a mystery, and when to reveal just enough to shift the atmosphere. They recognize that tone, posture, and timing communicate far more than vocabulary ever will. Because the world sees in symbols, not in facts. A bowed head might look humble or weak. A steady gaze might seem confident or intimidating. It's all in how people interpret it. And those who understand perception learn how to use that interpretation as leverage. Every person you meet already carries assumptions about strength, status, and authority. If you don't shape those assumptions, the world will shape them for you. And more often than not, it will shape them against you. That's why perception matters. Not because we're chasing appearances, but because appearances shape how the world interacts with us. Imagine a king walking through a crowded market wearing rags. No one notices him. No one listens. But place a crown on his head, and suddenly, the same people who ignored him start bowing. What changed? Not his essence, not his wisdom, only how he was perceived. That's the quiet secret of influence. When you control perception, you never have to demand respect. It follows naturally. You don't need to lie. You just need to reveal selectively. Truth is like a sword, powerful, but only effective when used with precision. Not every truth is meant for every moment. Not every detail is meant for every audience. The wise understand what to reveal, when to reveal it, and what to withhold to protect their influence. Because transparency without timing is vulnerability, but revelation with discernment, that's strategy. There are moments when you must appear strong, even when you feel weak. Not for pride, but because leadership demands clarity. People can't follow you if you look lost. There are moments when you must appear calm, not because you don't feel the storm, but because others need your steadiness more than your honesty. And sometimes, you must even appear uncertain, less informed, less capable. Because being underestimated gives you freedom to move without being watched. To control perception is to play a higher game. Power doesn't always come from the move itself. It often comes from what that move communicates. Every word, every silence, every gesture, all of it shapes the room. People won't just respond to what you do. They'll respond to what they think it means. If they see authority, they'll follow. If they see confusion, they'll doubt. If they see vision, they'll align. If they sense fear, they'll retreat. So remember this. Controlling perception isn't vanity. It's stewardship over your influence, your message, and your destiny. Rule number 3. Win the mind before you win the fight. Every battle you'll ever face begins in one place, the mind. Long before conflict ever reaches your doorstep, before words become weapons, before opposition even organizes, the real fight has already begun inside your thoughts. That's the first battlefield. And if you lose there, you'll lose everywhere else, no matter how strong or talented you are. The mind isn't just where ideas live. It's where reality is shaped. What you believe about yourself, about others, about what's possible. That belief system dictates how you act, what you tolerate, and what you pursue. A person can be gifted, skilled, connected. But if their thinking is fractured, their path will always be crooked. The truly powerful know this. They don't start by gathering weapons. They start by securing clarity. They claim dominion over their inner world before they attempt to influence the outer one. Because if you can shape a mind, your own or someone else's, you can shape a destiny. That's why the greatest leaders in history weren't just warriors. They were thinkers. They didn't just fight battles. They won them twice, once in the mind, and then again in the world. When you rule your thoughts, you rule your reactions. And when you rule your reactions, you rule outcomes. Most people prepare for conflict by building arguments, sharpening comebacks, rehearsing what they'll say. But the wise prepare differently. They don't ask, "What should I say?" They ask, "What must they believe?" Because if you've already shaped what someone believes, you don't need to win the argument. You've already won the perspective. When the mind aligns, resistance collapses. You're no longer pushing against their will. You're guiding their agreement. When you walk into a room, people's minds start working instantly. They're forming judgments about you before you even speak, based on your posture, tone, and presence. The truly dominant individual understands that. They don't just prepare their words. They prepare the effect those words will have. Because every sentence you speak is a seed, and every mind you speak into is soil. If you want to outmaneuver others, don't waste energy on surface battles. Go deeper. Find the root thought driving their behavior and shift it. Behind every reaction is a belief. Behind every pattern is a mindset. Change the thought, and you change the person. Even in your own life, your biggest struggles rarely come from other people. They come from what you believe about those people and about yourself. Many are trapped not by their circumstances, but by the stories in their own heads. They believe they're not ready, not good enough, not strong enough, and that belief stops them long before any enemy does. But when you change the thought, you change the outcome. That's why your mind must be guarded. You can't allow every opinion access. You can't let doubt take root. You can't let fear narrate your story. Because once your mind is compromised, your choices follow and your destiny drifts. People follow conviction more than charisma. A person who speaks with clarity disarms confusion. A person who knows who they are doesn't need to shout. Their certainty becomes contagious. Influence begins in the mind and spreads through conviction. When you win that internal war, your words carry weight. Even a whisper commands attention. The one who shapes thoughts shapes legacies. Power doesn't begin with muscle. It begins with mental mastery. Those who conquer their minds will always command their world. Rule number 4. Exploit the weakness that pride hides. Pride is one of the most fascinating illusions of human behavior. It walks into every room dressed as strength, loud, polished, confident, untouchable. But here's the truth. Pride is rarely strength. It's armor. And armor only exists to protect something fragile underneath. Behind pride, there's always a weakness, a wound, a fear. And if you want to navigate people with wisdom, not manipulation, but understanding, you have to learn how to look past what pride shows and see what pride protects. There's no better camouflage than arrogance. When you see someone boasting constantly, interrupting, performing, it's easy to think you're dealing with someone powerful. But the wise observer knows pride isn't power, it's protection. People perform when they're afraid to be seen. They inflate their image when they feel invisible inside. They try to dominate others when they secretly fear being dominated. So, instead of being provoked by pride, study it. Because if you can locate what pride is hiding, you'll understand the person behind it better than they understand themselves. This isn't about manipulating people or breaking them down. It's about seeing the truth that others can't. Because leadership, real leadership, isn't about control. It's about clarity. When someone attacks you with arrogance, the average person reacts emotionally. They push back, raise their voice, try to prove themselves. But the wise, they stay calm. They know pride's biggest weakness is exposure. Pride must perform. It has to keep the mask on at all costs. And when you refuse to give it the reaction it's looking for, you start shaking that mask. The more pride is ignored, the louder it gets, until it reveals exactly what it was trying to hide. See, pride isn't random. It always has a source. Somewhere, that person learned that being small was unsafe. Somewhere, they decided that to survive, they had to appear larger than life. And that wound still controls them. If you can recognize that, you gain insight most people never see. Because when everyone else is arguing with their mask, you're speaking directly to the human behind it. That's why those who truly understand power never try to out-pride the proud. You don't outshout arrogance with louder arrogance. You move with subtlety. You lean in with insight, not ego. You might acknowledge their strength while quietly speaking to their fear. You might validate one side of them while addressing the insecurity underneath. That's how you bypass their defenses without breaking them. That's how influence flows. It's not about crushing people. It's about moving through their illusions with awareness and restraint. Some doors in life don't open through confrontation. They open through understanding. You can't bulldoze pride. You have to outweight it. Because pride will eventually overextend itself. It always does. It stretches too far to prove it's invincible, and that's when it collapses. History is full of kings, leaders, and warriors destroyed by their own pride. They couldn't admit fault. They couldn't accept correction. They mistook performance for power and fell from their own height. That's why the wise never rush to bring pride down. They wait for pride to bring itself down. Let pride do the talking. Let it walk into the trap it built for itself. You simply stay still, calm, observant. Because the moment pride overreaches, it exposes the very weakness it was trying to hide. Maybe it's a fear of failure. Maybe it's a desperate need for validation. Maybe it's the inability to be wrong. Every form of pride has its soft spot, the place where the mask starts to crack. And if you learn to see it without judgment, without ego, you become a master of human behavior. You can lead without force, influence without demanding, disarm without confrontation. The most powerful people don't fight pride with pride. They let pride reveal itself. They stay quiet while others perform. They watch while others need to be seen. They study the pauses, the overreactions, the tone changes. Because those moments reveal the truth hidden under the performance. Wherever there's pride, there's fear. And wherever there's fear, there's an opening for understanding or for strategic advantage. You can use that insight in business, leadership, negotiation, relationships, anywhere human nature operates. If you can discern pride's mask, you can read every room. And that brings us to the fifth and final rule. One of the most powerful principles of all. Rule number 5. Always remain the mystery they cannot solve. In a world obsessed with exposure, clarity, and oversharing, there is something deeply magnetic about mystery. Not deception, not dishonesty, but intentional restraint. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the one who speaks the loudest. It's the one no one can quite figure out. Because what people can't predict, they can't control. And what they can't label, they can't limit. There's a quiet kind of influence that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. It walks in silence, but bends the room. It doesn't defend, explain, or justify. It simply is. And the moment you master that, the moment you stop needing to be understood, you begin to hold a kind of power that cannot be taken away. People crave certainty. They want to define you, categorize you, measure you. It gives them a sense of control. But the moment you become predictable, you become manageable. And the moment you're manageable, you stop being respected. You start being tolerated. Mystery removes that. It keeps others on edge, not in fear, but in awareness. They pay attention when you speak. They wonder what you're thinking when you're silent. They second-guess themselves when you don't react the way they expected. That's power, quiet, subtle, psychological power. The greatest minds in history understood this. The wisest leaders, the most magnetic figures, they didn't reveal everything. They understood that power often grows best in the shadows. They listened more than they spoke. They moved less but achieved more. They spoke only when their words could shift the room. Because power is not always shown in expression. Sometimes it's in what you withhold. You don't need to reveal every plan. You don't need to correct every false narrative. You don't need to respond to every insult. The moment you start explaining yourself to everyone, you lower your value. Because explanation invites judgment. But mystery commands respect. Even in divine terms, mystery holds meaning. Not everything sacred is meant to be revealed. Timing matters. Secrecy protects power. If everyone knows your weaknesses, your habits, your pressure points, they can predict your every move. But if you remain unreadable, others are forced to move carefully around you. You become the unknown variable, the unpredictable presence. And unpredictability is power. You're not fighting for control anymore, you already have it. While others talk, you prepare. While they boast, you observe. While they show their cards, you build your strategy in silence. Mystery is not arrogance, it's wisdom. Because exposure breeds vulnerability. When people think they fully know you, they start crossing boundaries. They get careless. They assume too much. But when you carry mystery, when your silence carries weight, when your eyes say more than your words, people approach you with caution. They measure their words. They respect your presence. And that is dominance without aggression. The most effective moves you'll ever make in life will often be quiet. You'll shift dynamics with a single glance. You'll change narratives with a single sentence. You'll walk away from noise and let silence echo louder than any defense ever could. Mystery is the cloak that protects your power until it's time to reveal it. When you reveal too much too soon, you surrender leverage. But when you stay composed, unreadable, and deliberate, your influence expands without effort. You don't need to prove your power. You are the proof. Your actions, your calm, your restraint, they do the talking. Let others chase attention. You chase precision. Let others reveal their every move. You reveal only what's necessary. Power grows in the shadows of discipline. And the moment you stop needing to be seen, you start being felt. That's how legends move. Quietly. Because mystery isn't emptiness. It's mastery. When others can't solve you, they can't control you. When they can't read you, they can't predict you. And when they can't predict you, they have no choice but to respect you. That is not manipulation. That is dominion. So stay quiet when others rush to explain. Be composed when others scramble to react. Hold your presence while others try to measure it. You don't have to control the world when you master silence, perception, mindset, insight, and mystery. Control naturally begins to follow you. That's not ego. That's order. That's not domination through fear. That's influence through wisdom. When your silence holds weight, your words will move mountains. When your mystery deepens, your presence becomes unforgettable. And when you master these principles, you no longer chase power, you become it. Walk with quiet strength. Lead with calm vision. And let the world wonder what you'll do next. Because they'll never see it coming. And that's exactly why you'll always stay one move ahead. Let's bring everything together. You've learned the 5 Machiavellian rules: silence, perception, the mind, pride, and mystery. But there's something deeper holding them all together, something most people miss. It's what I call the art of stillness. Stillness is not passivity. Stillness is precision. It's the point where every lesson you've heard stops being theory and becomes instinct. Because when you master silence, you learn when to wait. When you master perception, you learn how to appear. When you master the mind, you learn what to think. When you see through pride, you learn what to touch. And when you master mystery, you learn what not to reveal. All these things converge into stillness, the mark of someone who moves with purpose, not impulse. In a world obsessed with constant motion, stillness looks like rebellion. Everyone's chasing something: validation, noise, distraction. They move fast because they're afraid of being forgotten, but the truly powerful move slowly, deliberately, because they already know who they are. They don't chase, they choose. They don't react, they respond. And when they move, the whole atmosphere shifts. That's the energy of dominance, not frantic, not loud, but calm and decisive. It's how great strategists, warriors, and leaders have always ruled. Because stillness doesn't mean standing still. It means moving without waste. Every action is calculated, every silence loaded with meaning, every gesture carrying intent. When you reach that level, people feel your energy before they hear your words. You don't have to demand respect, your presence creates it. But let's be real, the path to that kind of control isn't easy. Silence demands restraint in a world built on reaction. Controlling perception requires awareness when everyone else is consumed by appearance. Winning the mind demands inner warfare against your own doubt, fear, and conditioning. Seeing through pride means you must confront your own ego first. And mystery? Mystery requires patience, in a time when everyone is pressured to explain themselves. Each rule is a discipline, and every discipline costs you comfort. Because power, real power, doesn't grow in comfort. It grows in control. You learn control by watching yourself in real time. When you're provoked, how fast do you react? When someone insults you, can you stay silent? When someone misunderstands you, can you resist the urge to defend? When someone tries to read you, can you stay unreadable? These are not tests of personality. They're tests of dominance. And every time you pass one, you sharpen your aura. Because the world doesn't follow noise. It follows certainty. And certainty doesn't come from explaining yourself to everyone. It comes from knowing who you are and standing firm in it. That's why your enemies eventually tire themselves out trying to understand you. They throw stones at shadows. They make assumptions. They miscalculate. While they waste their energy trying to read you, you're already 5 moves ahead. That's what Machiavelli meant by strategy through awareness. That's why he valued observation over emotion, restraint over reaction, and timing over talk. Power is never about domination through force. Force creates resistance. But control through presence, that's influence. And influence lasts far longer than fear ever will. There will always be people who confuse your calm with weakness. Let them. They will think your silence means surrender. Your stillness means indecision. Your mystery means insecurity. They'll misread you, and that's exactly where your leverage begins. Because when they underestimate you, they reveal their own lack of depth. They show their cards while you show nothing. They attack shadows while you move in light. And when the time comes to act, when you finally decide to speak, to move, to strike, it will feel like lightning to everyone who doubted you. That's why patience is the ultimate power. It's what allows kings to outlast rebels. It's what lets quiet men control loud rooms. It's what turns restraint into a weapon sharper than any sword. Because timing, not talent, wins wars. And when your silence, your calm, and your mystery converge, your timing becomes supernatural. You no longer rush into conflict. You invite the storm to reveal everyone else's weakness before you move. You let others unravel themselves with their noise. You let pride expose its own crack. You let lies collapse under their own weight. And when the battlefield clears, you're the only one still standing untouched, unbothered, and unexposed. That's the kind of power the world doesn't understand, but always obeys. To live this way, you must shift how you see strength. Strength isn't about how much you can control others. It's about how little others can control you. It's not about forcing your way forward. It's about moving so precisely that the path unfolds for you. When you understand this, you stop competing for attention. You stop explaining yourself to people who can't see you. You stop giving your energy to arguments that lead nowhere. You start walking in quiet confidence, and you let your results speak. Because silence doesn't mean surrender. It means strategy. Mystery doesn't mean weakness. It means depth. And stillness doesn't mean you're stuck. It means you're calculating. The world teaches you to perform, but performance is fragile. When applause fades, so does your worth if it depends on being seen. But when your value is rooted in clarity, not attention when it's built on observation, not validation, nothing can take it from you. So when people gossip, let them. When they provoke, stay silent. When they misunderstand, stay patient. When they think they've figured you out, change direction. You're not here to be predictable. You're here to be effective. And effectiveness is silent. It's invisible until the result speaks for itself. Every time you hold your tongue, every time you stay calm while others lose control, every time you choose strategy over reaction, your influence deepens. You become the person people can't read and therefore can't manipulate. You become the one who walks into chaos and calms it, not by talking louder, but by simply existing with unshakable energy. That's the kind of power that doesn't fade. It doesn't rely on followers, status, or approval. It's internal, eternal, unseen but unmistakable. The world's loudest men are often the weakest, but the world's quietest men, they are the ones who move nations without ever raising their voice. So protect your mystery, guard your silence, master your perception, disarm pride, and conquer the mind that commands it all. Do that, and you won't just play the game. You'll become the game. Because those who move in stillness are never forced to chase control. Control begins to chase them. Let's close this with something deeper. Something beyond strategy, beyond intellect, beyond power itself. Because all the rules, silence, perception, the mind, pride, mystery, they all point to one thing: mastery of self. That's the true throne Machiavelli was talking about. Not ruling others, ruling yourself. Because until you can govern your emotions, your reactions, and your energy, you'll always be ruled by those who can. So, let's bring this home. You were never meant to live chaotically, tossed around by noise, provoked by every comment, distracted by every illusion of importance. You were meant to move with precision, to see beyond appearances, to sense what others miss, to walk into a room and shift its energy not through volume, but through presence. And that presence doesn't come from pretending. It comes from alignment. When your inner world is ordered, your outer world begins to obey it. That's why all true power starts quietly in the dark, in solitude, in silence. When you spend enough time alone, your thoughts start forming structure. Your emotions start obeying discipline. And soon, people start reacting to you differently, not because you've changed what you say, but because you've changed what you radiate. The one who knows himself doesn't need to perform. The one who understands his own mind doesn't need to prove it. And the one who can sit in silence without discomfort has already conquered the loudest enemies: doubt, insecurity, and fear. You see, the world keeps telling you to speak up, stand out, make noise. But power doesn't shout. Power watches. Power waits. Power moves when the timing is perfect, not when the pressure is loud. So stop chasing attention. Chase awareness. Because awareness gives you something attention never will control. The one who sees clearly doesn't need to fight. They already know how the battle will end before it starts. Let's be honest, these rules are not easy to live by. Silence feels uncomfortable, patience feels slow, restraint feels unnatural in a world addicted to reaction. But that's the test. Every time you resist the urge to prove yourself, you rise above the crowd. Every time you let pride collapse on its own instead of attacking it, you grow sharper. Every time you stay unreadable while others show their hand, you build leverage. Power is built in those invisible moments, the ones no one sees. The moments when you could have spoken but didn't. When you could have explained but stayed still. When you could have retaliated but smiled instead. Those moments are your training grounds, and every time you pass them, your aura shifts. You move from being someone who reacts to someone who decides. And that's where authority begins. But let's talk about something deeper than tactics. Why it matters. Why should you care about power, strategy, or dominance? Because if you don't learn these things, someone else will use them on you. If you don't master your emotions, someone else will weaponize them. If you don't shape perception, the world will shape yours for you. and not in your favor. Life is a constant exchange of energy and influence. You're either directing it or you're being directed by it. That's why Machiavellian wisdom isn't about cruelty. It's about clarity. It's not manipulation. It's awareness. Not deceit, but discernment. Because when you can see clearly, you no longer fall for appearances. You can tell the difference between confidence and arrogance, between loyalty and convenience, between love and control. You start living from truth, not illusion. And that truth makes you unstoppable, because you can't be controlled by what you've already understood. Now let's return to stillness one last time. Stillness is not silence without purpose. Stillness is silence with direction. It's that moment before you move, where the air feels heavy but alive. It's the space where strategy meets spirit, where you don't just think, you see. When you reach that level of clarity, you no longer fear what others are doing. You no longer panic when plans change. You realize control is never about forcing outcomes. It's about creating alignment so strong that outcomes start to align themselves around you. The world begins to orbit your calm. That's the moment you stop chasing victory, because victory starts chasing you. So remember this: when you reveal nothing but observe everything, you always have the upper hand. When you win the mind before the battle, you win without resistance. When you listen more than you speak, your words start to carry thunder. When you see through pride, you pierce illusions that fool everyone else. And when you remain a mystery, you move like smoke, untouchable, unstoppable, unforgettable. This is not arrogance, it's awareness, it's spiritual self-command. To outsmart anyone is not to outtalk them. It's to rise so far above their noise that they exhaust themselves trying to understand your silence. Let others crave applause. Let them perform for approval. Let them trade truth for attention. You don't need any of it. Because when you operate from quiet authority, the world eventually bends to your frequency. You don't demand respect, you draw it. You don't chase power, you attract it. You don't fight for dominance, you embody it. And that's where the transformation happens. You stop being reactive, and you become reflective. You stop chasing outcomes, and you start orchestrating them. You stop living on the surface, and you start shaping the undercurrent. That's when everything changes. You begin to notice people watching you differently. They speak more carefully around you. They second-guess their words before confronting you. Not because you're intimidating, but because your energy is unreadable. And unreadable always equals powerful. So, as we close, may you walk in quiet strength. May your silence speak more than your defense. May your mystery protect your purpose. May your awareness disarm deception. And may your stillness outlast the storms of this world. Because the one who sees clearly, speaks rarely, and moves precisely, that's the one who holds true dominion. Not the dominion of ego, but the dominion of wisdom. Not the dominance of noise, but the authority of presence. When you master yourself, the world starts following your rhythm. When you understand your silence begins to shape reality. So lead wisely, move silently, and rule not through fear, not through force, but through quiet, unshakable vision.